I'm taking it that usually you advise your clients to go with leasing rather than buying.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to NEMT Experts. I have a man with me who has 35 years, a wealth of experience in this industry, Mr. Jay Mudrick, the owner of Fleet Advisory Associates. Jay, how you doing?
I'm well, Nirav. How about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for being with me.
Oh, I appreciate the time and I appreciate the opportunity. I've obviously seen your work, seen the platform, and excited to be part of it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm excited to get your insights on a number of topics. Leasing versus buying vehicles is one that I want to cover. But before we get into all that, Jay, I'd first love to for you to give the audience your background, your story, how you got into this industry, what you've done over 3.5 decades in this industry.
GE Capital was the first company I joined. They were building out their commercial leasing business. And from there, 35 years later, here I am. One thing leads to another. Spent, the last 20 or so in the transportation space, and most of that time in what I define as or generally considered the fleet management industry. Fleet management is broader scope. It's vehicle leasing, but it also entails things like services, so telematics, fuel programs, managed maintenance, things of that nature. I have always enjoyed working with small to medium-sized businesses, working with entrepreneurs.
Jay, our love for entrepreneurship is shared. I want to get into a topic that a lot of people, especially starting out their business, really grapple with, which is, they have a limited amount of cash. To be an entrepreneur, start their business, they got to spend on a lot of different things. Vehicles can be expensive, especially new ones.
Yes.
And you have the option of buying vehicles. You have the option of leasing vehicles. Jay, what do new NEMT entrepreneurs need to think about in figuring out which path to go?
First and foremost, when we talk about leasing, there are a lot of different ways leases can be structured. What we are typically talking about in a commercial application, this is not your father's retail car lease. It's not your Uncle Jay's, your cousin Nirav's retail car lease, where it's $19.99 down, $7.99 a month for 36 months, 30,000 mile cap, turn it in and walk away. 90+% of commercial vehicles, the terms, the structure are much different than that and much more well suited to the particular application. To your point about cash availability and so on, that's why we find most of our clients are leaning towards leasing, because it's really twofold. You're right, the assets are extraordinarily expensive, especially specialized assets like NEMT. When a business buys those assets, two things happen. One is you're probably putting money down. So that's cash out of pocket that you could have used to hire and train drivers. You could have used to bring on a platform like Bambi that's going to help you run your business better, smarter, easier. So whatever money you're putting down on a vehicle draws away from that. The other thing that draws away from is whatever commercial credit capacity you have with your existing bank relationships. So your bank is really good at understanding your business. They're good at seeing cash flows, working capital, lending against things like that. They're not experts in vehicles. And so it's the vehicle experts that are able to be more comfortable and do 100% financing, who are willing to finance or lease used vehicles, who will help you with an upfit so that you don't have to go out. If you're buying a chassis and then waiting for an upfit, you don't need to go out of pocket for chassis funding. You can fund the chassis on an interest-only interim basis, and then once the upfit's complete, you cut that over to a permanent long-term lease.
So even if we're going down the path of leasing, right, there's a lot of factors to consider in how that lease is actually structured, what it covers. Can you talk to me a bit about like someone starting new and they're getting their first vehicle, right?
Yeah.
Like, when they go and want to get that lease, how do they go about it in sort of a step-by-step kind of way?
Most businesses that we work with, at least the first vehicle, the first 2 or 3 vehicles, typically they're either financing on their own independently, or they're possibly using a manufacturer's program, something like that. Once a business has been up and running and has established some track record for a year, a couple of years, then the way it typically works is a business will complete an application. It's an online application. They'll share a couple of years' financials. At least in our case, we'll put a line of credit in place. The line of credit doesn't cost anything to have the line set up. There is no obligation to use it. But the reason the line approach makes sense is because that's available and ready to go at whatever time the business finds the vehicle that they're looking for. So the ability to walk into a dealership and say, I have access to this credit capacity. I can buy this vehicle, and if you want to deliver it, I can have it funded. If I can have it funded in 48 hours. That puts that business in a much different negotiating position with the dealership.
Mm.
So it all starts with setting up that line.
Got it. And let's go further down in the process.
Sure.
You set up the line. Can you talk to me a bit about, after you've gotten the vehicle, how does that sort of leasing situation play out? What's the best strategies for the owner to move forward if they want to, ultimately own or lease more vehicles?
Once again, come back to your father's lease. Most commercial vehicle leases are set up under a structure that's called open-end. Open-end means that I like to think of it as a loan with a balloon, but a floating term. What I mean by floating term is you've got a fixed interest rate, but your term floats in that you can keep that vehicle in service for as short a period or as long a period as you like. You are responsible for you as the lessee are responsible for the residual value of the vehicle, but every month that you pay in, you're building equity. So your principal value is going down. That is particularly good strategy based on a number of things that are happening in the market today. One is obviously the uncertainty surrounding interest rates, reimbursement, having that flexibility of saying, I know I can put that vehicle in service, but I know that if 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that's not the right vehicle for me, knowing that I don't have prepayment penalties, I don't have any ongoing obligation. All I have to do is pay the vehicle out and sell the vehicle, pay out the lease at that point. If there's a shortfall, I'm responsible for that. But given how used vehicles hold their value these days, it's not very often that there's a shortfall. It's much more often that a customer has equity in that vehicle.
Got it. Okay. So, Jay, tell me this then. In what situations would you advise someone to actually go and buy rather than lease?
The most prominent would be a company that either is established enough that they have absolutely positively no concerns about credit capacity whatsoever. There are those companies. Generally, those companies tend to be companies that have been in business a long time. They have not grown. They do not have particular plans to grow. Those businesses can go out and write a check and take the money out of working capital and put it on their books. Or again, if you've got unlimited credit capacity or unconstrained credit capacity, then yes, then it makes sense. Outside of that, for most of your audience, who again is probably rapidly growing, probably has at least some restrictions on their credit access, and is probably better off putting whatever cash they have, they're better off putting into pursuing new contracts, hiring new drivers, looking at new facilities, things of that nature. That's a much better use of cash on hand.
Jay, I'm taking it that usually you advise your clients to go with leasing rather than buying.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Again, I have advised clients, Nirav, that have long-established businesses, that have larger operations, 50-plus vehicles. They're already on a robust and ongoing replacement cycle. And for those clients, if they want to pay cash or if they want to just take out a bank loan, sure, I advise them that that's probably not a bad idea. But again, I don't think that's most of your audience.
Yeah. And I think this is great for most of the audience to hear because, I mean, folks just talk about buying vehicles, buying new ones, buying used ones. But, we don't hear enough folks talking about the leasing options that are available, which, it just seems so obvious that, when you have cash constraints, which everybody does to some degree, and you're getting off the ground and you're growing and scaling, like it frees up so much of your cash to spend on other things you need.
When you have assets that are as expensive as these assets are, and when you have clients that have expectations that all of our clients do, and when your vehicle, once again, is a billboard that drives up and down the road all day, every day, replacement cycle is critical. And having the flexibility through a lease program where if that vehicle's still looks good, still acts good, and still drives well, 36 months into it, that's great. But if you need to get out of a vehicle after 24 months, having the ability to step out with no prepayment penalties, no early termination, none of that, that flexibility is key.
Talk to us about the metrics that NEMT business owners need to think about that point to, hey, it's time to get the next vehicle. Like, I'm all set up for it now.
Number one is mileage. And mileage varies by vehicle spec, vehicle type, but you want to get out of you don't want to get out of a vehicle 500 miles before you start having problems. Because if you get out of a vehicle 500 miles before you start having problems, that means you've cut it too close. You don't want to get out of the vehicle 5,000 miles after you have problems, because there's something called a sunk cost bias, which is someone says, hey, I just, I put a transmission into that vehicle 6 months ago, so I don't want to get rid of the vehicle now because I just made that investment. Guess what? Yeah, you did just put in that trans, but there's a timing chain right around the corner, or there's some other set of issues that's going to be coming. So the idea is whatever the metric, 10, 15, 20,000 miles before that vehicle is going to start having issues. The vehicle is going to have its highest trade-in value. You're going to be able to put it to a better second use, or the buyer will be able to put it to a better second use. And once again, you'll be able to step up in image, step up driver satisfaction, step up client satisfaction, all by doing that replacement on time. The other piece of it about why you want to get out, have that much breathing room in terms of getting out early, is what's the cost of downtime? I would argue that in an NEMT business, downtime can put you out of business in very short order. If you've got 3 or 4 seniors in the back of a vehicle and you're running them to different appointments, and you're broken down on the side of the road in Cupertino in July when you're stuck on the 101 and it's 98 degrees out, and you know that sitting by the side of the road for an hour means it's going to take you 3 hours longer to do your drop-offs because you're going to hit rush hour. You're not getting that client back. You're not getting the goodwill back. And the entire time you're sitting there, once again, there are cars driving by. There are admins driving by. There are purchasing specialists driving by who are saying, gee, I know we just let a big contract and these folks wanted to bid on it. Is that really who I want to be entrusting my patients to?
You know, Jay, it's often that people think the time that the vehicle is down, that's the time that's my problem. Reality is that has a lasting damage on your business because it affects your reputation. That's exactly right. You're not going to get, so if you have a vehicle that's down and you can't take certain customers or you can't fulfill certain broker contracts or facility contracts, those brokers and facilities aren't going to be in a rush to do business with you right after you've got a vehicle that's back up.
What's the old saying about how long it takes to build a reputation and build confidence, confidence of the customer, confidence of the client, as opposed to how long it takes to rebuild those? or to reestablish those. And it's an issue that you need to stay well in front of.
Would you ever recommend, any number of backup vehicles that people should keep in place?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I'll do is when I'm working with a client, first thing I want to see, send me your fleet list. I want to know exactly what vehicles you have. I want to see age. I want to see mileage. In an ideal world, I want you to show me not one vehicle report, but give me a report from 6 months ago also, because I want to be able to look at vehicle by vehicle. I want to be able to see how much mileage have you put on each one of those vehicles in the past 6 months. Are there vehicles that are being overutilized and underutilized? If you've got a relatively low cost, relatively generic spec, or I should say relatively low book value, relatively generic spec vehicle that's got a few years on it, has some miles, but it still has your logo, it still runs like a champ, graphics are good, nobody's got a problem with it, AC works. Sure, why not keep that vehicle sitting in reserve for downtime, whether it be preventative maintenance or whether it be some kind of breakdown or other unexpected damage? Have that vehicle ready to jump in and take place, and take its place, because to your point, you don't get a second chance to turn down a broker. You don't get a second chance to turn down a facility administrator. Or maybe you do get a second chance, but you're not going to be first call. All of a sudden, you're going to be fifth or sixth call. So they're only going to be getting to you if they are desperate, if it's an absolute last measure. You want to be first call. You want to be the one that says, if you've got a problem, I can help you.
I want to direct anyone who wants to tap into this wealth of knowledge to look in the description of this video, where I've put the contact info for Jay Mudrick.
Run, Bambi, run.
Awesome.